Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sporting Max. But today we're joined by NBL and AFL commentator and analyst, and also one of the voices of SEN Radio, Cam Luke. Welcome to the podcast, Cam. How are you doing?
Oh, mate, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. It's an exciting time here in Melbourne in particular. AFL's about to start. We just finished the NBL Cup, but the NBL season's not even halfway through. There is so much going on, mate. So a pleasure to jump on the pod and have a chat.
Now, Cam, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood and what growing up was like for you?
It was good. It was always sport related. When I was growing up, my dad was a jockey, so I wanted to be a jockey when I was really, really young. And I was a little bit too big. I know for people who know me, I'm not overly big as it is, but too big to be a jockey. So Mum had to sit me down. I was like about 7 or 8. I used to ride a rocking horse all the time. I just got a pony. We just moved from Deer Park, where we were, out to where my parents still live in Bacchus Marsh. So I was trying to be a jockey or wanted to be a jockey, but it was well and truly too big. So I sort of just split like a lot of kids do, like everyone does, between basketball and little athletics and trying to work my way through that. So growing up was cool. We had a full court basketball court at our house, and by that I mean dirt. But we had a ring at each end. We lived on like 10 acres where my parents still live, as I said, just out of Bacchus Marsh. We had horses, and it was great fun. It was one of those. I guess like so many kids who love their sport growing up, playing whatever it could possibly be and being as good as you could be, which for me wasn't all that good, as in from a skill point of view, but it was lots of fun. And I guess my love for sport and how it's shaped me now in my work is started from about the age of 5, and from there we continue to roll on through. What
sort of subjects were you into at school as a kid?
PE. That was about it. PE. No, like anything PE. And then it's just sort of, I wanted to be a journalist when I started to get into high school. So obviously English and writing and literature was something that I was sort of getting into just a little bit. Even in school, it was all about print journalism. I did my work experience in year 10 at the Winning Post, which is a horse racing newspaper and magazine and form. So even then I hadn't really thought about doing radio, which is where I do so much of my work, and I never really ever dreamed about doing TV. So growing up, it was like, all right, I'd like to be a professional athlete, but it's probably not going to happen. But print journalism, so sport was something I always wanted to end up in, regardless of as a participant or a journalist or a commentator. So it takes some time every now and then, but I got there.
Tell me a bit about what you did after you finished high school.
So when I finished high school, I think like a lot of people, you're really unsure as to what you want to do. So finished high school, and I was playing basketball for a club, Werribee, in the west of Melbourne, not far from where you live, Max. And then in that situation, I was doing so I worked for the club doing school clinics and running basketball camps as I was trying to work my way through what I wanted to do. So I went and did a TAFE course on sports management and coaching, and it was sort of just, enjoying it. Like it's not that it was loads of money, but it was also something. I was at the basketball court of the stadium every single day, going out to the school, and it sort of combined both, the juniors at Werribee where I coached and played as well. So for 3 or 4 years, I was sort of doing that, and I really enjoyed it. Not much money. It's one of those situations where at some point I had to try and get a real job. So I decided to go into media and give that a crack. But out of high school, it was more about just being able to play as much basketball as possible and trying combining a couple of different roles to allow me to do that. Still living at home makes a life a lot easier. I didn't have to move out. I wasn't going too far away. So it kind of wasn't too bad. And I was at the basketball stadium pretty much every day, which I loved.
Now, in 2010, you began working with Craig Hutchison's Crop Media, doing sort of multiple radio shows and other projects. How did you and sort of working with Crop Media all sort of come about?
Well, I was working in Ballarat as a breakfast radio announcer at Power FM. So working at Ballarat and like pretty much every regional radio show, they have an AFL segment on a Friday. It might be a tipping competition, and it might just be a little chat. And Hutchie, through his association with Grant Broadcasters at the time, had that relationship with John Fitzgibbon, who is the general manager, still is the general manager of Ballarat. So that conversation was like, hey, can you come on with Cam and Jules, who was my co-host at the time? And so Hutchie would come on every Friday. Now, at the end of that year, I was sort of looking for a new challenge and looking at some other things. So I pulled the pin on Ballarat after being there for nearly 3 years and thought I'll get into here and find a new opportunity. And it happened, luckily, that Hutchie, when I touched base and said, hey, I'm not sure if there's any roles going, but this is where I'm sort of looking at. I'm looking at some new staff. If it's still regional radio, it's away from Ballarat, but I'd like to get involved. And the overnights host, midnight till 6 on SEN, and just pulled the pin to go back to Gold Coast. He had a nice job and his family is from up there, and it just all sort of worked from there.
Now, I see you've done a radio show on SEN named The Road to the London Olympics. You did this with the great man, Andrew Gaze. What was that like to work on the radio with him? And then what was that whole experience like for you?
Well, it was amazing because like anyone growing up and loving basketball around my age or even a little bit younger, a little bit older, Andrew Gaze was everyone's hero. So it was always, hey, an Andrew Gaze guy. I wore number 10 because of Andrew Gaze. I'd met him once or twice without getting to know him too well. But as time went on and the Olympics were on the horizon, I love the Olympics. I love track and field in particular. So I pitched to Hutchie and Croc Media and I said, look, this is my idea. We get Andrew Gaze, 5-time Olympian. I think I can put together a good show here. I'll produce it. And that's how it played out. Next thing, Andrew Gaze was a part of the show. And it was amazing. It was one of those first sort of projects or pitches or ideas that I had that actually got picked up. We did 10 episodes of it leading towards the London Olympics. And our first episode was with Ben Johnson. Now, you're probably too young. You definitely weren't born in 1988, but he was a part of the greatest 100-meter final of all time. Now, and then it all turned controversial. It was a situation where he got tested positive to steroids 2 days later. Carl Lewis it was one of the biggest controversies, if not the biggest, from a sporting perspective in Olympic history. And we had him on the first episode. And I've got to say this, Ben Johnson and I got into a little bit of an argument on air about steroids, which I couldn't be any further against. And Gazy, the legend that he is, just puts the seat back. I was looking for a little bit of help. I thought, come on, Drew, come in and fly the flag. But we were getting pretty deep into it. But it was a really good chat, really good interview, and then a really good series because Andrew Gaze, anytime you go to 5 Olympic Games and you've carried the flag and be your host as a host nation country, it makes it a little bit easier to be able to call people up and say, oh, look, I've got this show called The Flame. Is there any chance that quite possibly you want to come on? And because Andrew was on the show, it made it a lot easier to get the best guests. It was a really, really fun experience. And hopefully we're doing something with the Armchair experts for the Olympic Games, which I'm really looking forward to. But hopefully we can get back to the Olympic Games sometime soon because it's such a great experience.
In 2016, you had your own radio show with EON Sports Radio. What were some things or what sports in general did you guys talk about?
It was really tough because it was a national radio show. It was digital, which is something that hasn't really taken off here yet, although it's getting bigger and bigger each and every year. So sort of time at Croc Media around that time because of restructuring, there was a new role and I was sort of a little bit, not lost, but I was looking for a new opportunity and it just happened to pop up. But people in Melbourne, South Australia and West Australia, I love AFL. People in Queensland and in New South Wales are big rugby league people. And to find that right balance, it was really, really hard because we'd talk about the AFL and the AFL fans would listen in and then we'd go to NFL and then NRL. And then you go through it. It's very hard to find the right balance in Australia. We have such patriotic fans with different codes. It wasn't a great experience. There was a lot of financial issues at the radio station. And in the end, I was actually on air when the station got cancelled. So I was on air in a radio show in breakfast, myself and my co-host Richie Callender, and we got told that this is it. So it was a really surreal experience and one that when I look back, and it was money owed and we didn't get paid from a lot of our stuff, but it made me weirdly, it made me a better broadcaster. The producer that came to work with me is someone who I still work with every single day. He's at Channel 7 with the Armchair experts. So we've had these different projects that have really taken off since then. But while it wasn't overarchingly great, the fact was that it helped me become a better broadcaster because I had to do a lot more research about stuff that I may not have known about. We had to work our way through a 4-hour radio show every day where we might not have had much talk back. So look, it was a slight little sour taste in our mouths for very many hardworking people who worked there, but it did make me better at what I was doing. And you continue to learn every single day. And it was a decent learning experience, both in the studio and outside of it. And I did get to interview Usain Bolt, who came on our show. So it's still the highest profile athlete that I've ever spoken to. So it wasn't all bad. So it had its moments.
Now, how have you found your experience over the years with being on the radio, and what's it like to sit behind the mic?
It's really cool. It's the best job in the world. One, unlike TV, you don't have to dress up. So I can roll to work in a T-shirt or thongs or whatever it might be. Yeah. And essentially, there's two really good aspects to it. You get to sit down and talk about stuff you want to talk about, stuff you're passionate about, stuff you think you might have an opinion about that people might be able to resonate with, either good or bad. So you get to talk to like-minded sports fans and chew the fat, just like you might have at school, and you might at school or at work or whatever it might be around the water cooler. And you get to interview, cool athletes, people from around the sporting world that have got great stories to tell, who might have done great things or might be involved in something that they're trying to aim, like, i.e. the AFL and the NRL seasons or the Olympic Games. So just to sit down behind the microphone and just have you in a very intimate setting talking to people who love sport just as much as you do. It's great. Now, not always a cup of tea. You get a lot of people who might be angry or different when it comes to opinion, but that's exactly what sport is. That's exactly what it should be, a conversation. Sometimes you get abuse that is unwarranted, but sport is a conversation that anyone can have. Like every single person I know has an AFL team. They might not be heavily passionate where they go to every single game, but every single person I meet at some point has had a feeling of supportership towards an AFL team or an NRL team or some sporting team. And that's enough to be able to reignite a conversation, be it on the radio or in person, wherever that might be.
Now, after EON Sports, you became a part of the Melbourne United media. Can you tell me about what your role there was like up until June 2020?
Well, I'll tell you this. Vince Crivelli, who's the CEO of Melbourne United to this day, Tom Vandervos, who was part of the marketing team and multimedia team, and Ash Stewart, who is now the media manager at the Sydney Kings, but the media manager at Melbourne United. I didn't have a job. I was sort of struggling a little bit to get back into it. So I called up Vince, who I've known for 20 years of playing basketball against teams that he coached. And I said, Vince, this is what I want to do. I'm not asking for $1 million, but I need to, be creative here and I've got some ideas. And to credit for the three people as mentioned, Vince, Tom, and Ash, they were extremely welcoming for someone who was outside the NBL, someone who the other two, Ash and Tom, had never met, and away we went. And it was cool. Like, we got to do different things. They were very open to podcasts, to sitting down and doing a little pre-game show on Facebook for 5 or 6 minutes. I was hosting their functions as well when they started to redo their functions. So when I look back at what got me going again from a work perspective, from a confidence perspective, and from being in front of the camera, I'd never done any sort of TV or visual stuff before. That all of a sudden, because of what was at Melbourne United and contacts I made through the year in which they won the championship. So it was kind of cool to be involved in that as well. That was really the start of working and pushing ideas through digital and being able to make contacts that, hey, I've got some ideas, creative ideas that if we work together can work. But it was a very fun year. It got me going again, and they won the title. And the moment they won the championship, we were live on Facebook. I was on the court interviewing the players who 1 minute ago won an NBL championship. So there was a lot of cool stuff that happened, and I'm forever grateful to not just Vince and Ash and Tom, but the entire organization, because it helped me a great deal. And I got to be involved in a documentary made on the actual championship, and that was something else that showed me a different side of what was happening to being able to make documentaries, and that was unbelievable.
What was that like to be a part of that Dreams and Nightmares documentary and then be there to experience and be there on court to experience the championship?
So with the championship first, it was great. As a basketball fan and as a sporting fan, anything and a lot of when I come up with ideas or try to get a job, it's to get free tickets to sporting event and sit courtside and be there. And it was unreal. The joint was absolutely buzzing that night. It was a Game 5 series, and I'd gone to Adelaide the week before. They led 2-1 and they trailed by 25, 26, and then just nearly stole it on the road. And then the following week rolled in, Hisense Arena, 10,500, all blacked out with the T-shirts, and it was cool. So to be courtside and see something like that's always fun. To be able to walk onto the court and interview, these men who had just achieved a lifelong goal with, Chris Golding had never won a championship. To sort of be there straight up and the party and be hanging on the outskirts was really cool. And the doco was unreal. Like I great for me because I did all the questioning. So all the Q&As for all the key players and all the people who were involved and everything you've seen in the documentary. That was myself going one-on-one. For Tom Vandervos, who edited the whole documentary himself, it would have been hell because for some of these players, I sat down for 2 hours and just sat there and had a chat about what it all meant. And then he had to try and edit that into a 2-hour documentary, which was incredibly well done, unbelievably well done. So love to be a part of it. Love the opportunity I had. Didn't envy what Tom had to do on the back of it, but he did a wonderful job. And there was a fair bit of pride associated to that when we sat down and watched it.
What's it like doing things like sports and awards nights and MC events and media and all this kind of thing?
It's cool. It's great. Like emceeing, I love emceeing stuff because you get to roll on in. It's always a good night. So anytime you MC a function, everyone's happy to be there. So no one's forced to go. You're essentially hosting a party where you get to read stuff out, and sometimes it's an award winner. So been lucky enough to host, country racing awards a couple of times from my racing background. And, when names get read out, those people have achieved something great in that particular year. So emceeing is something I really like because everyone's happy. A couple of beers are flowing on the wines, and it's a big party because it's always celebrating a season or an event. And everyone's happy to be up there, and it's always a joyful mood. And I get to, again, not dissimilar to radio, I get to interview people who have done something really special. And it's either people who are in a position of running a sport or people who have done something in that sport who are now having a quick chat to me about all the special things they did. And anytime there's that type of excitement, it's always really easy and fun.
Now, we've had your NBL Overtime co-hosts on the podcast in Liam Santamaria and Corey Williams. Can you tell me about how the show all started?
Well, it's one of those situations where I said to Guy Neville, who's the head of digital, I had this idea, not dissimilar to the Armchair Experts, and I said, here we go. This is what I think we can do. The show, basketball was going to a new level, and there wasn't really any basketball magazine shows at the time. So I got in contact with Guy and sort of said, look, this is the idea. I want Homicide. I've known Liam a long time. Can you make this work? And next thing you know, he comes back to me 2 weeks later. We had an interview or a quick sit down and a coffee at NBL headquarters. And he's like, this is sort of how I see it. And I said, however you want to do it, is I'm okay with it. I can provide the content and I can host it, but whatever you think is going to work for the league. Next thing you know, we're in a studio filming episode 1, and it's gone from there. It's been an incredible amount of fun. It has coincided with the NBL becoming one of the best leagues in the world, and media is a huge part of any sporting league or association or governing body. So to be able to do it and be a part of it and have a very small part to play and go to Vegas for the Summer League a couple of years ago, get to watch all these close games up close and personal and be able to talk about them every single Tuesday night is so much fun. And to have the different personalities, you mentioned Homicide and Corey Williams, you know what he's like. He's always willing to be passionate and have a nice discussion. And to work with Liam, who I've known, I played basketball against him all growing up in juniors, played against him in seniors. So to be able to work so close with a professional and a superstar like him I've known for 25 years is unreal.
Can you tell me about the first episode and what it was like rocking up on set?
Well, Liam and I got there nice and early, and we rocked in and we had the backdrop and it looked cool and we were nicely pumped. It was right after Melbourne United and Sydney Kings had played in the Melbourne Cup Eve game. Mitch McCarron had tipped in the game winner, so they were the two best teams in the league, and that's just how it worked because we didn't quite get it up in time for the first week. So it was about a month. 6 weeks into the season. But at the time, Homicide had only committed to doing every fortnight. He wasn't really sure. Maybe it was part of our fault where we'd sort of said, we're doing this show. And it's going to go through Twitter and, hasn't quite got to TV just yet. And he's like, okay, fair enough. But then when he walked in, and as you know, Homicide's always filming something.
Yep.
So when he walked in, he just lost his mind. He's seen the backdrop. He's seen the panel. He's seen us dressed nicely, ready to go. And on that moment, he realized this is going to be something he needed to be a part of each and every week. And he's like, I'll be here every week. And we're like, yeah, mate, that's the idea. And, the energy was there. We were talking about that Sydney-Melbourne rivalry, Mitch McCarron, the tip-in, this great game. Bogut was here and the Kings were playing well and Casper Ware. And, it was cool. And we just fed off the energy of those great games early and away we went.
Now, you've spoken to some big names on the show. LaMelo Ball, RJ Hampton, Jock Landale, the NBL Commissioner, Jeremy Loliga, who we've also had on the podcast. What's it like to chat with these guys and stars that have and are going to the NBA?
It's cool. Jeremy, the commish, as I like to, and I started that nickname, he's the commissioner, but people wouldn't call him the commissioner. I said, well, you're the commish. So he's the commish of, one of the best leagues in the world, and it gets big and better each and every year. So anytime he pops in, and he's always great with his time, he gives us honest appraisals of how the league is going and what their ideas are. And he's come on the show in the biggest moments, the launching of Next Stars, obviously the decision last year around the NBL Grand Final, the fact of when the draft was about to happen and LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton. So he's always been really great with his time and honest and gives us great insight to what it's like to run the league. LaMelo and RJ was cool. It was cool because they'd only just got here. It was a really big day because it was the day of the Boomers and the USA at Marvel Stadium. So we're all psyched about going to Marvel in front of 60,000 and watching them go at it. And they rolled on in and they were just new. They're 18-year-old kids. And the next thing you know, they're just excited and they're talking about what they're going to do. We didn't know how good they were going to be. Mm-hmm. At that time, RJ Hampton was the better player, or at least the better prospect. And LaMelo Ball really in about, 4 quarters up against Perth changed everyone's opinion, and scouts all around the world went nuts. And then someone like Jock Landale's great. Mitch Creek, these guys who we know a lot about, but we get to know a bit more intimately, and they're opening up. They're honest. Landale told us on NBL Overtime they were going to go undefeated. That's the type of stuff we love. That's the type of stuff because, if you believe it, tell us. And too many athletes, too many sporting stars around the world, in team sports in particular, are very mindful of the brands, and they're very cliched and they don't give a great deal. In the NBL, we feel we get a lot out of, the Landales, the Mitch Creeks of the world, Bryce Cottons, Mitch McCarrons, Chris Golden. These superstars that join us on NBL Overtime at different points are so great. And they all have their own stories to tell. They're writing their own stories in the NBL, but they're also got backstories that have been brilliant, be it in the NBA or trying out in the NBA or playing in Europe or playing for their countries. And it's so cool to just chew the fat with these players who are superstars and are they going to play for our country if they don't win an NBL championship, play for their country, or maybe go back to the NBA. And that's fun to be a part of.
Now, when Jock Landale said that Melbourne United are going to go undefeated, Shane Hill was onto it and he said that if they did, he would shave his head. So what's your perspective on that?
Now, Hammer just took the risk, knew that. I didn't think they'd go undefeated, and not because I don't think Melbourne are good, but I think they're really good. But I just think it's too hard in today's day and age in this league to be so good to go through undefeated. Yeah. I don't know, was Hammer going to peroxide his bald head, was he, if he shaved his head off? Because he's been peroxiding his hair since 1985. So you knew that it was a big thing when Hammer was talking about getting rid of it. But you know what? I didn't think it would happen. It hasn't happened. But it's exactly what players should think. When they roll in, you're part of a good team, you should be thinking you're going to be good. You should be thinking every single game you go into. Yeah, that's exactly what you should be. And people might think it's arrogant, or people might think that it's going too far. Well, you know what it is? It's backing yourself to win a game, as every single club should do. Is it realistic to go undefeated in the NBL? Yeah, probably. Unrealistic, at least, to do it. But is it realistic to believe that Landale and Melbourne United can have a big year and win the championship?
Of course
no. So that's where he was coming from. And It was a good comment, and I like the fact that he didn't backtrack. He went with it, and in the end, it was probably always going to fall over from that statement, but he didn't back away from it. He thinks they're going to be good. He continues to believe that, I'd say.
What's it like to work with Liam Santamaria and Corey Homicide-Williams?
It's great. It's great because they're such different personalities. Like Corey's a loud American, former MVP, passionate, got an opinion, which Liam does as well, but has the opinion and shoots it and shouts it from the rooftop. With Liam, totally different. And it just works so well for the show. I've got the best job in the world because I sit there. I know exactly how they tick because we've worked together so closely for the last 2 and a little bit years. I know what's going to get Homicide going. I know which way to lead into Liam on certain things. I know when to push and I know when to pull it back just a little bit. So having 2 totally different people. You couldn't find 2 totally different people than Corey and Liam, both outstanding at what they do in their own right. So as long as they have the talent, doesn't matter which way it comes from or which way it goes, I'm able to hopefully mold it towards putting together a good show. And so far, I'm fairly proud of what we've been able to achieve.
Now, I went back to the episode the other day where Corey first wore his Ain't a Cupcake League hoodie.
Yeah.
And I saw you and Liam were sitting there like, what's this? And then he's like, oh, I got you guys freebies. And what was your first impression of that top?
Well, I'll tell you my first impression was I still haven't got my freebie. I still don't have it. It's been 2 years later. He's trying to sell them on Instagram. Liam and I are still not going without it. It surprised me, but it's something he's always said, and he stands by it. And it's, as time goes on, it's become part of vernacular in the NBL because players use it. Coaches understand it, and it's the very fact is that it ain't no cupcake league. And the perfect example of these guys who come over here, highly credentialed, have been in the NBA and may think that it's going to come in and dominate, and they don't. And they find it very hard, very early. And the fact is that, and he pushed it to RJ and LaMelo. It's not, you're not coming over here to dominate. Now, they both had outstanding years, don't get me wrong, in particular LaMelo. But you're just not going to roll in and think that you can just dominate these guys. Yeah, and it's exactly what it's right. So it did surprise us a little bit, but he lives by that motto and he continues to push it, and I think it's proven to be fairly correct. But I still haven't got my freebies. So thank you for reminding me, Max. I'll definitely bring that up.
Armchair Experts with yourself and AFL Brownlow medalist Adam Cooney. Tell me about the show and what it's like to work with Adam Cooney.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of those shows that we just sit down and you're just with your mate. And I'd known Adam a little bit before the show started. When I went to Channel 7 with the idea, we were trying to develop it and pitch it to Channel 7 and get it up. They asked who I wanted to work with, and it's not a typical football show as such. We do talk a lot of football, obviously, but I needed someone I had a bit of a rapport with, someone who, because we're on late night, can speak football. He's got a great football mind, but also be able to ease a little bit and do some other stuff and sort of take the mickey out of themselves. So Adam Cooney was the perfect example of that. His football mind is second to none, and that's no real surprise. When you play 250 games and you win a Brownlow medal, and you're part of really good teams, as he was for 2, 3, 4 years at the Western Bulldogs, there's no surprise as into what he can bring. So the show's evolved. We're now going into our 4th year. It's on Channel 7 now. We've now got 3 shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on TV on the Friday night, and the other 2, of course, being just on Twitter through our digital stream at 7AFL. So to sit there and watch the game. So we spend, of course, the game Friday night sitting down, have some dinner, talking, throwing ideas around with our production team, and then to be able to turn the cameras on and do that's extremely fun.
Now, you're also currently on SEN Radio. Tell me about what you do here.
Well, this could be the most remarkable job I've ever got, because what I do Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is I sit in the radio studio. We have 2 big TVs that have the horse racing on, and Campbell Brown, former Hawthorn premiership player and big lover of racing. David Taggart, former Group 1 winning jockey, 6-time. We sit down and we give tips and we just talk like we're at the pub. That's what we do. We don't even play the races. We just describe what we are seeing into a microphone each and every day. And it is remarkably fun. When it started the station, we're coming up to our 1 year birthday in a couple of weeks on March 27. When we started the station, or when the station was started, I wasn't part of it, and I was privy of some of the conversations, what they were trying to do, and I was like, this is probably not going to work because you don't have the racing rights. Well, it's gone to an absolute whole new level. So I sit there 4 hours a day watching the racing, giving tips, which takes some time, but I love it being a horse racing guy. And in the end, we find on around 40 stations around the country, the entire country, all of us in it together. I refer to them as the SEN track family. We tip winners. We play music when our horses win that we've tipped, and sometimes some sad music when it loses, but it is remarkable. And SEN, I don't do as much on the SEN 11, 16 SEN anymore. I do occasionally do some fill-in stuff, but mainly SEN track. So SEN's cool, talk back, love doing footy and all-time sport. But right now it's SEN track and I'm having a ball.
Now, I've heard you this season in the NBL commentary team doing a great job this year. What's it like to commentate games in the studio, and then what's sort of displayed around the studio and on the panel and things like that?
It's cool. It's different. I'm a little bit different, obviously, in the hub situation in which we have. And in 2020, in all sports around the world, everyone was calling from the hub. So the NBL was a year in front of what, in fact, everyone had to do. I've never called an NBL game from a stadium. So I've called some NBL 1, but I've never called NBL. So for me, my first games were all in the studio, in the hub. So I never had the situation where it's different for me. Every time I've called an NBL game, I've gone to a studio. We've got the big TVs. We've got the stats sitting right there. We've got the panel with the three of us, and away we go. And we did the same thing with the WNBL also in the summer, or early in the summer, not long before Christmas. So sit there, and it's, again, I find it so much fun because all I have to do, because I'm not a special expert, all I have to do is just describe what I'm seeing. So if someone throws a big dunk down, I get excited. If someone snaffles a 10th rebound, I get excited with a double-double, if that's the case. And it's so much fun, and I'm looking forward to it. I've had a couple of weeks off with the NBL Cup, a lot going on, and John Casey, the doyen, being a part of the commentary team. So looking forward to getting back in there, not too distant future.
Josh Giddey, what a star. He's been so far, 18 years old, playing amazing basketball, obviously for the Adelaide 36ers. What pick would you be taking him at or projecting him at in the NBA draft?
I think he'll be top 10. I think he'll be the first international player taken. We're having a little bit of a different year this year where we're seeing the collegiate players and we have a bit of an idea as we are about to get into March Madness. But his ball vision, and I've seen some numbers today, he's been outstanding in the last month or so as he's eased back into it, into his rhythm. His jump shot needs some work still, and LaMelo Ball's needed some work as well. But if you look, and scouts around the world and teams around the world or in the NBA will be like, this is very comparable to what LaMelo Ball did last year. Now, it may not be with as much flash as pizzazz, and when you have 4 million Instagram followers like LaMelo Ball does, and everything gets exaggerated. But his ball vision, the way he's able to work the pick and roll, the way that he seems to always have time, his height, his length, and now his ability where he's able to hit the three a lot more consistently and that pull-up jumper just means he's just going to get better. We've still got half a season to go. And if he continues to build on this, the sky's the limit. But I think he'll be top 10 and be very close to being that first international player drafter, which is so exciting. With the Next Stars program, it's one thing to have the Americans come in and do what they did. Brazilians, we did Lazada as well. Jessup, Ball, Hampton last year, Bruce Bowen a couple of years ago. Sorry, Brian Bowen a couple of years ago. And the fact is, that's all great, and it's unreal for the league. But we've got an Australian doing it, or Australians. Mojave King, of course, will probably be here for 2 years. But with an Australian doing it, it just adds even more to the program and just continues to tell us how great this whole league is.
How do you think the 36ers season is going to turn out? Obviously, with a couple of injuries in Isaac Humphries and things like that, and then the release of Donald Sloan, and then Brandon Paul coming into the squad.
Brandon Paul's going to be great. I think we've already seen a little bit of what he can do on debut, which is always hard to do. I think they need Isaac Humphries back, and that's the thing. That foot injury, him and DJ have been working really well together. Giddy's Giddy. Crocker had his moments. Sunday Detch is a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate and is playing great basketball, but they need Isaac Humphries. They need the big boy in the middle so I can balance them out a little bit better. So I think so much of their late season form is going to hit. Not to say Giddy won't continue playing well. Not to say that Paul's not going to be outstanding. Daniel Johnson is Daniel Johnson. These guys can play well, but I think they still need Isaac Humphries. And Keanu Pinder's been, fighting outside his weight division as a starting four-man here in this league in the last 3 or 4 games. McVeigh coming off the bench has been good, but just a little undersized in some aspects. So they need Isaac Humphries back. Easier said than done. But if he does, then they can cause some damage. It's not a team you want to play, in particular in Adelaide.
Now, Ryan Brokaw, the start of his sort of career with the Phoenix, has he been on, do you think he might have been on sort of a couple of limited minutes sort of warming up into the games, or as he's had a sort of break off and then come into the side and sort of played a week in? Yeah,
no doubt it's a minutes restriction. And the fact is, he hasn't played basketball for a year with the pandemic, and then the bubble didn't quite work out. His wife, I think, with an illness that was susceptible to coronavirus. So he did. He stayed with her rather than go to the bubble. So he hadn't played for a year. Then you sit in quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room, and while he was jumping on the bike and trying to keep his conditioning up, he hadn't really touched the ball. So to not rush him into it, mind you, he gets a wide open 3 in 10 seconds when he gets on the court. But he's the type of guy that's going to take this Phoenix team, who a lot of people already believe are going to be really good, really good. He just adds that beautiful, cream on top. So looking forward to him getting deeper into this team. He'll be a starter. No, and that's hard to do at Phoenix because Turangi's been great. Glidden's been great. Mitch Creek's dominating. Kiva Sykes still has to come back from that injury that's had him out. So they've got 7 or 8 guys that could legitimately lay claims to starting in the NBL. So it's not always easy for Simon Mitchell, and that's a balancing act of having a talented squad. But Ryan Brokaw will be there.
Now, the 2 teams, the Cairns with sort of Oliver Machado, and then the Breakers with 2 Webster brothers, Ty and Corey, they're sort of mid to late bottom of the ladder. Do you think they're going to get back up there as predicted at the start of this season?
I don't think either will make the top 4 now, and I think they may still get better. They will. Ty Webster's been great. Corey Webster's got that injury. McDowell White, of course, in that situation is going to come in. Lamar Patterson released, now ending up at it's just a remarkable situation that we are seeing. But I think they're going to give themselves too much work to do. There are teams in this league that they're going to have to get on a run. Both teams, or either going to have to get on a run. You might need to win 9 out of 10 games. And I just think that's too hard from where they are right now. If you look at Cairns, DJ Newell last year, leading scorer, probably more importantly, defensive player of the year. They're missing that wing defense early. They're missing that transition, maybe a little bit of that leadership. Cam Oliver hasn't quite got to the same heights, but he's right there. We know how talented he is. And Scotty Machado is getting defended just a little bit differently by teams. It hasn't been as effective, although I think he's still been great. So their third option's their big one. Was it going to be Majok Deng? Maybe. Yep. He gets out when they start to get and play a little bit better. Is it going to be Quat Noi? Maybe, but he's only the second year of his professional career. It's not going to be Mojave King because he's just starting. And it's just that third option that Cairns in such a deep league has kind of hurt him a little bit. So, hurt them a little bit. So that's the big issue with both of those sides. Are they talented? Yes. Can they win games? Yes. Can they win enough to really make a dent on the top 4? I'd say doubtful, but there is still a long way to go. So I'm not going to rule it out, but it will be interesting to see if these teams get going. New imports, McDowell White coming in at New Zealand. When does Corey Webster get back? Finn Delaney, I think, is almost the key to New Zealand because when he plays well, they traditionally do play well.
Patterson back at the Bullets. Sobey, when he got snubbed from the Boomers side, I think that might have hyped him off a bit, and he's come out and just played some terrific basketball for the Bullets. And then with Patterson obviously coming back into that side, it adds that sort of extra bit of development in terms of the Bullets season.
It'll be interesting because Brisbane were playing really good basketball. Nathan Sobey is the second best player in the league behind Bryce Cotton in this particular season. They were going well. Defensively, they were really bad in the second half. Kings put up 71 on Saturday night. And all of a sudden, they go get Lamar Patterson back. Now, I love Lamar Patterson. All NBL first team 2 years in a row, and this may well work, but he's obviously been injured.
He didn't come in a
great deal of shape, but I'm hearing he's getting better. He's working feverishly. defensively was their issue. Now, I'm not saying Lamar Patterson can't play defense. The fact is that they've got to be able to find a stopper. Now, is that going to be him? Let's see. Is it going to take away too much from what Nathan Sobey's been able to do? I hope not, because what we've, be it the Boomer snub, which will be resurrected. He will be in that squad, surely. I'm not giving up on that just yet, surely. But the fact is that you don't want to take from Nathan Sobey because he's been so good. The issue hasn't been the offensive end. It's been a defensive end of the court. So that's going to be an interesting mix to try and make sure you don't take too much away from Sobey, and hopefully they get defensive world right. But I like it. I like the fact that they're taking risks. They're not just in it to make the playoffs and be an okay team. They're in it to win the championship. Is it going to work? Well, only time will tell, but they've got to get going sooner rather than later if they're to knock Perth or Melbourne or even the Phoenix from those top couple of spots, because yet again, winning games on the road and big finals against those teams, very hard to do.
Now, you mentioned Perth and Bryce Cotton. Start of the season, I think everyone was sort of had a bit of doubt in Perth with the loss of sort of Nick Kay, those kinds of guys. But then Bryce Cotton and John Mooney and Todd Blanchfield, Travers, who's come out as a development player and starting 5 most weeks. And they've just surprised everyone and taken the league by shock.
Mate, I tell you, I didn't wholly count them out of making the 4, but I didn't have them in my 4. And then you looked at the lineup, John Mooney, how good is he? First year pro. Is he a guy who's going to be able to put enough points up? Bryce Cotton has to do it himself, possibly. How's Mitch Norton, keeping in mind we've lost Damien Martin, how's Mitch Norton going to step in and be able to play? Nick Kay's gone, best power forward in the league the last 2 years. All of a sudden, they get Todd Blanchfield in. He's doing exactly what Tariko White did, in fact, more efficiently. Mitch Norton's been outstanding. He stepped straight up and filled that void as much as someone can of Damien Martin's. John Mooney's been incredible. Like double every night. Lock it in. And offensively, he's been great. So, and now we keep hearing that, hey, citizenship, it's coming. They can add you would think an American 4. Luke Travers, who you touched on, had his moments. Jared Bairstow had his moments, picked him from the state league. They've had injuries as well. Clint Steindl hasn't had the year this year that he had in previous years. And then you have someone like Corey Sherville who's able to come on. Jesse Wagstaff, the captain, 6 championships. Probably his best year he's been able to do from a scoring output. So it has been remarkable, and just got to give all credit to Trevor Gleeson, because what they're able to do, winning the NBL Cup, going on this run, being away from home, and they lost one at home early. In fact, probably should have lost 2. Phoenix had them early in that first game they played before Perth were able to get home late. So it is a remarkable situation. And I'd say that streak of making the playoffs for the last 4 million years is going to continue, because they look like a serious championship contender.
Now, I want to know your NBL MVP this season, Defensive Player of the Year, and championship winners.
I'm going to give it to Bryce Cotton, but I think Nathan Sobey they're the 2 I think will be fighting out. Jock Landale's going to be there as well. I picked him pre-season. So I'll say Cotton just, but Nathan Sobey, if he continues this, is going to be seriously considered. Defensive Player of the Year award, I'm going to give it to Sunday Detch. I think he's been great. Really, really good. He's been, and there's a lot of different very good basketballers. Mitch Norton, who we mentioned moments ago. Big fella inside. Isaac Humphries probably led it earlier in the year. Is probably at this point going to miss too many games. I'll give it to Sunday Detch, and I'll give the championship to Melbourne United.
Melbourne United. Why?
I think their depth, Chris Golding, you'll be able to get Jack White back, Landale, Mitch McCarron's having an outstanding year. Shea Ili off the bench has been good. Uday Barbar's been good. Achul's been great. But we talk a lot about Perth, Scotty Hobson hopefully get back from injury soon. I forgot to mention him. That's how deep they are. But we talk a lot about Perth still having an import slot. So does Melbourne. Melbourne they only have the one import now. I'm not saying if they've got the money or whatever it might be, but they've still got an import slot up their sleeve. Now, will they use it? I would say probably not. But if things start to get a little desperate, maybe they will.
With Scotty maybe taking extra time out.
Exactly. And next thing you know, they roll another import in, and being able to fit them all in, though, is going to be hard to do. But I'm going to say Melbourne United. I went with them in the preseason. They're still on top of the ladder, but Perth have been outstanding. Phoenix are getting better. The whole league feels like they're getting better, but I'll give it to Melbourne United. I'm not willing to jump off that ship just yet.
Who's going to be in that championship series with them, do you think?
Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. I think we could see all Melbourne final. A big throwdown, 5 games. Might even lobby. I might try and lobby the commission to make it a 7-game series because it's all, we're going to love it. But yeah, look, it's going to come down. It's just going to come down to minutes in the fourth quarter because any team can beat any other team, and Melbourne are so deep. Perth are Perth. Southeast Melbourne, Phoenix. Brisbane are making some changes, going to try and get going. If Illawarra can get going, like every team can win and legitimate. In fact, every team right now should be saying, we get on a roll, we're talented enough, we're deep enough to win it. But I think, the Kings, I actually picked them to make the top 4, which a lot of people didn't do. If Xavier Cooks can get going again, who knows there? They've still got a lot of home games to play, but I'm going to go Melbourne v Melbourne at the moment, or Melbourne v Southeast Melbourne, but I'm not counting out. Like Perth are outstanding. Kings get going, Brisbane. This is the excitement of it. There's so much basketball to go.
Now, who are your AFL premiers and your Brownlow medalists that you're sort of predicting for this season?
I am going to predict the West Coast Eagles to win the premiership. Last year, I'm interested as into how they didn't handle the hub. Now, there's no excuses for that. They're professionals and other teams handled it. They didn't. But I think they added Tim Kelly. I think they've got some guys who are going to come in and put a bit of pressure on certain players as well. Like Oscar Allen is one of those guys. If Kennedy or Darling are not having a good not having a good patch in the season or in games, Oscar Allen's a kid that can go up. Nick Nat, they're still really talented. So more consistency, hopefully, touch wood, that we're not going to have coronavirus situation again where they can't play games at home. So the West Coast Eagles for me, but geez, Richmond. Going to be really long. Same thing as NBL. That there's 5 or 6. You can make cases for 5 or 6 teams legitimately to win the AFL Premiership. And from a Brownlow perspective, I'll stay in the West. Tim Kelly.
Tim Kelly,
I think have a really good year, and he does poll well. So I think that if the Eagles win well, he's the type of guy. The Eagles, I will put a caveat on it. I think Elliot Yeo needs to get back from that injury and play good footy. I think he's their most important player, and I love him. I think he's their best player. But round 1's not overly important. It's later in the year, so they've got to get him right to have a real crack at it. So Elliot Yeo, but Tim Kelly, I think the West Coast Eagles double with Tim Kelly winning the Brownlow.
What's your best advice for anyone trying to make their way into the sports media and be successful like yourself?
Just be passionate. Like if you love it, and this goes for almost anything, but if you love something, you're passionate about it. It oozes out of you. And in a conversation, the conversations I have on the radio or on the TV, the exact same conversations I have sitting on the couch at home or sitting in the stands at a basketball or a football game or a sporting event, because that's what sport does for me. And I think from that perspective, you work hard and you're passionate and you love something as much as I do sport, and it's always easy to be able to achieve your goals, which I get to do. And that goes for anyone who, whatever they want to do. If they want to be a doctor and they want to do it and they're passionate about it and they love it and they work hard, then good things will happen. If they want to be a tradesman, if they want to be a police officer, whatever it might be. And that's the advice I have that translates to me and sports media, but also in all walks of life.
Thanks, Cam, for coming on the podcast and putting aside your time tonight to come on and have a chat.
Been a pleasure, mate. I can't believe you got Corey and Liam on before me, but hey, I love it, mate, and thank you. I love your work. Keep doing it. You're doing an amazing job, and look forward to a couple of years working together, mate. You and I can do something special.
Thanks, Cam. Stay tuned, everyone, for some more Sporting Max.